Jill, hi. How are
Hi,
you?
Tim. I'm good. How are you?
Really excited to have you with us today on Tim Talks. So just to introduce myself, I'm Tim Hughes. I'm the co-founder of Digital Leadership Associates here in the UK. I'm also the author of the book Social Selling: Techniques to Influence Buyers and Changemakers. With me today, I'm very honoured to have Jill Konrath. Jill has written an amazing book called More Sales, Less Time. That's it there. And today we're going to talk about your book, because it's not like this is about how you're going to sell. It's actually how you're going to find more time to sell.
Yes.
And it's about your own journey, isn't it?
It is. I didn't actually start out to write a book about it. I actually set out to get rid of the overwhelm that I was feeling. I felt like I was working from day to night. I'd wake up in the morning, jump on my cell phone, and I'd still be working at 11:30 at night when I go to bed. And I was exhausted.
Jill, tell people where they can get hold of you, first of all, before we dive in and talk about this.
First off, they can find me at jillkonrath.com, and that's Jill Konrath with a K.
Konrath, yes?
Correct. Yes.
And you're on Twitter and you're on LinkedIn and.
Yes, I have almost 300,000 followers on LinkedIn right now, so it's kind of exciting. Yeah, I know. So people can find me there too.
Everyone just waits for you to speak and listens.
Yeah.
So tell us about you. So tell us about More Sales, Less Time, because I must admit, when I read that it was going to be yet another book about time management, I wasn't like thinking I need to read this. And then I read it and I thought, I do need to read this, because it's a book about time management, but for the modern day.
For the what?
For the modern day. For
the modern day, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, and I even say in the book that the traditional time management techniques don't work today. We're living in a digital environment. As salespeople, we're spending the bulk of our time online. Whether we're looking at people on LinkedIn, doing research on companies, in our CRM system. I mean, we are online all the time, and certainly our lifeline to the entire world is email. And being in the digital environment itself, our bodies were actually never designed for that. I mean, literally, we were not, as human beings, we were not created to live in the digital environment, and we are wired for distraction. And if anybody is like me out there, you go online with the full intention of, just checking your email and then doing, getting to work, and you can find yourself a half an hour later for example, I can read a LinkedIn email that comes in, and the LinkedIn email has some interesting articles. I click on the article, I go read the article, it has some research. Yep. That sounds interesting. I click on the research and I go to that next article. And then while I'm there, now because I'm sort of in a distracted mode,
yep, I'll
think, oh, I'm traveling to Boston next week or tomorrow or whatever. I wonder what the weather's like in Boston. And suddenly I'm flipping over to Boston on my cell phone. So my brain is, I've got a device open and I'm working my computer. I've got my cell phone out. I'm looking for Boston. I see the weather. And then I see this thing that says, sinkhole swallows 2 cars. Watch the video. And suddenly I'm watching a video about a sinkhole in China, that has just swallowed 2 cars. And I'm going, where? How did I get to this horrible place? And look at all the time I've wasted. But it's really, when I think about it, it's more than just time. And this is the other thing I realized. It's living in a state of constant distraction. And I truly believe that in today's business environment, certainly for selling, that we need to be at the top of our game, meaning we need to be thinkers. We need to be able to strategize, to analyze, to assess what we're going into, to figure out ways to help clients justify the business case, to help them move through a messy web of people that they have to get to agree on a change initiative. And all this requires focused thinking, where we really can take time to plan out some really good strategies that we can actually implement and to engage the people that we need. And what's happening in a distracted environment, we're not getting enough of that quality time. So we're actually hurting ourselves overall because we're wasting time, number one. And then number two, we're not operating at the top of our game because our brain cannot think at the level it needs to think at in order to make the difference that we need to make as human beings today.
And I agree with you. I see the situation that we have where we have all these things open on our desktops.
Yes.
And what we're trying to do is I'm trying to write a proposal, I'm trying to create an email, and I agree with you, thinking time is so important. You know, I remember going on a course and saying you had to put thinking time in your diary.
Yes.
And make time for it. And I'm a great believer in that. And you know, we're sitting there and going, yeah, and we need to do this. Ding! Oh, email come in. Oh, yeah, you know, ding! This happens. And I remember you write about it in your book, and it's like, yeah, I got that. Yeah, I really. And I was on holiday. I read it at Christmas, and as soon as I got home, first thing I did was start switching off all these dings, and then because you actually used applications, didn't you? You went and researched.
Yes, I mean, I spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to control my environment so that I was in control of it again. And I recognized early on that I did not have the willpower to do things myself, because the notifications coming at me, the binging and the pop-ups and stuff, they were too attractive. I mean, my amygdala and my brain is wired to look at this stuff, and I couldn't control it. And so then I started using apps to control things. But literally turning off the notifications, crucial. It just so lowered my distraction level and allowed me to focus. And most people don't do anything about it. And I mean, I think I read someplace, and I think it's in the book too, that the average email, 72% of people attend, they don't respond, but they check out an email within 6 seconds of it arriving in their inbox.
Yes.
I mean, that is a day of distraction. And then the time it takes to get your head back into what you were thinking about at the level of thinking that you were doing is 10 to 20 times the length of the interruptions. So if we can just stop the interruptions, control it, build a firewall around ourselves, and free up time to literally do the thinking that we need to do in order to be the best sales.
So do you now block out time and say that hour in the morning is for email, that's going to be for LinkedIn, that's going to be for client time or stuff like that? Okay.
Absolutely. It's literally blocking out time and keeping everything else there. It's not letting your calendar be open with just the actual meetings you have scheduled for the day. It's literally, like you said earlier, you told people to block in time to think and to plan. And yes, it should be on your calendar that you're blocking in time to do this kind of thing.
And have you weaned yourself off those applications, or are you still using that as a
I still use them. I mean, one application that I'll use frequently is Freedom. And Freedom is a wonderful app because it protects me and allows me to do what I want to do, meaning it doesn't allow me to go online whenever I hit a rough spot and go, I just can't figure this out. And then I go, I think I'll check email, or I'll go on LinkedIn and check things out. It actually blocks access to different sites that you would normally be tempted to go on. And for me, it's just nice knowing it's there so that I can use it when I really need to focus. And it keeps me from going into temptation.
I saw some research recently by Salesforce that said that salespeople's productive time was about, in front of customers, was about 30% of their day. And the rest of the time was doing other things. And I put that out on LinkedIn, and someone commented, actually it's to do with what you do with your time.
Yes.
And even though 30% of your time, 70% of your time may be seen as being admin tasks or stuff like that, it's still what you do with that time that's important, and the efficiency of that.
Yes. And do you realize that there's some additional research out there too that shows that top performing reps don't spend that much more per day interacting with customers. They maybe spend 3 or 4 hours a week more doing customer interactions and freeing up time to be with customers and not doing things that are not meaningful, more tasky things that feel good to complete but aren't getting you anywhere in terms of what you're really trying to accomplish. It's a function of just adding maybe an hour or two a day, and you are going to be like a rock star.
Because you say that in your book, you were actually trying to add 20 minutes and then 30 minutes and then but the fact that gave you an hour in the day is actually is a lot of time.
It's a huge amount of time. And you know, how you choose to use it is up to you. If you're smart, you'll use it on what really matters, you know, to you. And what really matters might be going home at 4 o'clock because you have a soccer game and you're picking up your kids and going to the soccer game. That's what really matters too, as well as, you know, going after that big account that could make your year. You know, I mean, it really depends on how you choose to use your time. But if you can focus your time that you have and get the maximum amount done, you will have a life too. And to me, I think that's what salespeople are lacking today, is a life, because they're so wired in and they're exhausted. And again, I'm going to go back to thinking, because I'm sort of hooked on this, but I really, like I said, think sales is a thinking job. And if we can free up time to, you know, think more, to rest our brains so that it can be working at a higher level. I mean, this is what it's about, and it's about protecting our biggest asset, you know, our time and our brain.
And you also talk about, which is something that I've actually used, which is a way of managing what you do on certain days of the week. And it kind of goes back to the old days, or what I saw was the old days, where we had PST, or prime selling time.
Yes.
And you don't seem to get that talked about nowadays, but making sure that, I think quite often with salespeople, you get people just adding tasks on and without taking any off.
Right. I mean,
and so we always get that with social selling, which is, but I've got a full day's work. Why am I going to do stuff on social? And then you can talk about, well, it's actually about culture, and it's actually about what you do nowadays. It's not a bit of this and a bit of that. It's kind of the whole thing. But I think certainly most salespeople I talk to, they feel completely overwhelmed, and all that happens is that people are just adding stuff to the workload. They're
not taking anything off. They're just adding. And they are being really too responsive. They're not being in control of their day. They're just letting things come at them and responding as they do. And by the way, you saw the research by Salesforce. I mean, if you talk to CEB, which is a great big research company.
Yes.
2 years ago at their annual conference, they said the number one issue that they were seeing was buyer overwhelm, which is something that I've been seeing for a long time. But finally, it's bubbling up on their charts that buyers are so overwhelmed, it's really difficult for them to make the decisions today because they get stuck trying to change. And secondarily, this past year, I said, well, what are you seeing now? You're talking about buyer overwhelm. I said, what are you seeing now? What's the emerging issue? And they said, seller overwhelm. Seller overwhelm. It is, without a doubt, we're seeing people being burned out. And their take on it, and I think this is really valid too, because there's literally two perspectives you can take. Number one, there's the organizational perspective. Like, what is the burden that the organization places on the seller to do things that may or may not be a good use of the salesperson's time? And number two, and this is the part I work on, is what is the individual part, and what can we do without technology, without anything, but what can each of us do personally to reduce, the time we spend connected to work, but maximize what we do to drive more revenue during that time that we're together. So there's two aspects, and as a leader in an organization, you need to, number one, be reducing the burden on your salespeople, because I mean, sometimes getting things through legal or HR sometimes it's a real chore to get things through and approved in your own organization, to fill out forms or to do all that kind of stuff. You should be looking at reducing that, maybe bringing in experts, maybe separating the sales positions into, the SDRs to open up the doors, and negotiators maybe at the end. I mean, you should be thinking about all that kind of stuff, but then you also need to be thinking about what can you implement today? How are your salespeople working? Are they really maximizing the time that they have? And the truth of the matter is, none of us are, because most of us are so distracted living in a digital environment. We have to relearn, or we have to learn, because some people are just entering the workforce. We have to learn how to work in an environment whose number one goal is to get you to click on something else. Yeah. And once we start clicking, by the way, our own brain starts becoming distracted, and then we distract ourselves. And then you go,
what was it I was working on? What was that really important thing I needed to do?
I know. Oh dear, I totally forgot to get to that today. Even though I have that meeting tomorrow. Oh, I suppose I'll get to it right away tomorrow.
It's okay. We'll just meet in the car park, won't we? And just
we'll just talk before we go.
We'll just sit in the car park and agree it, don't we? Yeah. We've always done it sales.
We'll get the whole strategy worked out in 10 minutes. I mean, it's a big account. We could make our year, but we've been busy.
Yeah. Jill, is there anything else that you think that we should learn in terms of your more sales, less time book and some of the things in terms of distractions and that? Is there anything else that you think we could learn?
My God, I mean, distractions are only the first 1 or 2 chapters or 1 or 2 sections. But there's a whole thing about, how do we schedule and work our day, and what is the secret sauce, and then finally, how can we set up systems to create more sales, less time too. And I mean, I could go into any one of those things and talk, for an hour, because it's kind of a pet of mine, but the reality of it is, I'll go back to, we have 2 things. We have, number 1, our time, which we can control, and most of us are frittering away too much of it, not focusing on what truly matters and can have an impact on our business. And secondarily, by frittering away all our time and living in this world of distractions, we are impacting the quality of our thinking, which is making us less effective at our jobs. And both of those things, I think, are absolutely crucial for success today.
I agree, Jill. And I loved the book. I mean, it was fantastic. As I said, I thought another time management book, and then you talk about your journey, and it's because of your story. That's when you read a novel, you have a story, but because it's your story and it's your journey, you get involved in that, and that takes the reader along through learning about those things. But you come out the other end going, I'm going to switch all this stuff off because actually it's a load of rubbish. And I do need to start focusing on, as you say, what matters, and actually doing something during the day.
One of the things I try to do, and this is how I always work in the field of sales, is I'm an experimenter. And I've always experimented with sales in different ways, trying to find out what is the most effective way to do anything, whether it's to make a cold call, to work with somebody on social media, to connect with somebody. What is the most effective way to do it? And I study it religiously because, to me, effectiveness is really, really crucial. I want to spend the least amount of time getting the maximum bang for my buck. I mean, that's literally what I want to do.
We all want to work 3 days a week and do and bust our number, don't we?
Right. And so, I mean, if somebody says call 100 people and, keep calling, I'm going, well, wait a minute. What if I could call 5 people and get 5 really good conversations? I mean, isn't that better than calling 100? And, aren't I further ahead? So I've always been an experimenter. And in this book, I spend a lot of time experimenting with time and different things that affect my success in trying to drive more sales, less time. Very different from what I've done in the other books, which are really more how to sell. This is really how to live a different life and how to create more time in your schedule so that you can do the selling aspect of your job. So to me, experimentation is crucial. I don't, it's my story, but I conducted a gazillion experiments, and I challenge people in the book to do these experiments as well and find out what works best for them. Yeah,
and you've also got research. There's right at the back of each chapter, there's because your attention to detail is amazing. And the way that you go, I've got that here, don't believe me, here's all the research that I've actually looked at to actually back that up, which, we, as salespeople, top salespeople, one of the, is you need to have an element of cynicism.
Yes.
And just because someone says this is great, you do need to question, which I guess comes back to your experimentation.
Yes. And it comes back to the research too. I mean, I'm a sales nerd. I mean, whatever is in sales and how can we be better in sales, that's what's interesting to me. But for this book, for the first time in my life, I really had to go outside the sales field. And I spent a lot of time studying neuroscientists, cognitive scientists, psychologists. I mean, I was like all over the board, reading and studying and diving into content that I would not typically read because it's not in my field or necessarily related, but suddenly it is vitally important to understand this kind of stuff. And I know that not everybody is as nerdy as me and wants to go into all the detail on that, but I do give them enough detail to understand this is not just me, going, here's how I work, and I'm like perfect with my time. No, I'm not perfect with my time. I am a learner. I need to figure out what works best, just like everybody else. And this is what the research is saying. And you know what? I think it's right. I mean, I think they're totally right with the research.
And it does come across in the book where you say, this is what works for me.
Yeah.
It might not work for you, but these are the sort of things that you need to be looking at.
Yes.
And I know that you early on, you actually used tools to really lock down what you actually looked at. And I decided not to do that. but you do actually offer tools that can actually really, this is, I can only use this application and I have to switch the PC off or something to reboot or something to actually use anything else. I know for some people that might actually be important. Or maybe it's, a bit like, you have to if you're going to give up alcohol, you have to stop completely rather than only having one gin and tonic, Yeah,
or even coffee, like I'm sitting here right now.
Yeah. So and sometimes, you do need to stop with the distractions and go out and completely stop them and then maybe start moving some of the back in. But it is about it, you do say in the book, it's about what works for you and experiment for yourself. And I really like that in the way with it, it's not, because with sales methodologies, quite often this is the method that you need to follow. And we've done this over 30 years, and and actually that method is probably right, but you do stand back and say, well, no, I'm just going to go straight to point 3, and then you fail, and then you realize that you do need to do that. But it is about making sure that you have stepped back and said, this is what works for me. You may want to try something else.
Yes.
Jill,
actually, what I want people to do is to try something. I want people to try something. I mean,
yes.
And if you're feeling crazy busy, if you're feeling like overwhelmed at all, if your sales reps are feeling overwhelmed, if they're telling you that they just can't get it all done during the day, try something. I mean, as a sales leader, you could be running experiments with your team. You could be having, let's try this for a couple weeks and see what difference it makes. You could have an hour where nobody checked email, and have an email-free hour for a week and see how much we can get done. I mean, there's all sorts of experiments you could try to increase productivity of your salespeople or increase your own personal productivity. So you get more done, you can sell more in less time. To me, that's what it's all about.
Selling more in less time sounds like a good plan to me. Jill, it's been fantastic. I know that you could talk for ever about this because you're passionate about it. Thank you so much for your time. I know you're really busy, and I really appreciate you coming on and talking to me about your book. It's fantastic, really insightful. Thank you, Jill.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you.